more communication education. I am Denise Hill. I am here to help you out with all the communication education that you need to be successful in your self talk, in your relationships, in your professional life, in the small groups that you get together with your friends to make sure that you don't have the communication breakdowns that could compromise all of those relationships. We don't want any of that. But unfortunately, we're not taught how to communicate. Not unless you're fortunate enough to go to college and take a COM 101 class, which is required, by the way. By then, you've been communicating for what, two, maybe 3 decades? Incorrectly, possibly, in a way that's ineffective for you to sustain a relationship. Yeah. So I'm here for all the communication education that you need. Today, we are talking about nonverbal communication. I want you to have everything that you need to know about nonverbal communication because a lot of people believe that if you're not speaking, you're not communicating. If you're not writing, you're not communicating. If you're not texting, you're not communicating. If you're not doing some form of actively delivering a message to somebody, then you're not actually communicating. Nothing can be further from the truth. Even when you're not speaking, you are communicating. Your very existence sends a message. You are communicating 24/7. Everything is communication. Everything you do, everything you say, everything you wear, everything you think and express through your gesture, everything is communication. And so, for the nonverbal part, I want to make sure you have what you need to know. And that was the first thing that you need to know, that even if you're not speaking, you are communicating. Nonverbal communication goes through the exact same process that verbal communication goes through. There is a sender that is putting together a message. That message is going through a channel to a receiver who breaks down that message for meaning, and then they formulate their own message and sends it, and that becomes feedback, and that cycle and that process just continues on and on and on. The only thing that's different regarding verbal communication and nonverbal communication is simply that you're not speaking. It's not verbal. That is the only difference. It's nonverbal. In fact, there are exponentially more ways to send and communicate a message to somebody nonverbally than there is verbally. You see, I can speak to you. That's verbal communication. Nonverbally, I can wear a shirt, I can gesture, I can blink real fast. Like, there are so many multiple ways to communicate a message, but it's the exact same process that you have to understand. And because it's the same process, you've got to be aware of the fact that you're participating in it, whether you acknowledge that or not. You are sending a message about who you are, what you believe, what you align yourself with, everything about you, still sending a message without you saying a word, without you participating, believing you're participating in a process, you're still doing so. You're making those choices of the message that you choose to send based on your culture, based on your religion, based on your societal influences, the type of music you like, the type of people you like to hang around, of the latest book that you read. That influences the types of nonverbal messages you send, but you've got to know you're still sending a message. Oh, Denise, I'm not sending any message. All I did was get into my car and drive down the street. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not saying anything to anybody. Did you put a bumper sticker on the back of your car that said, I like books? You just sent a message about who you are. Did you decide to wear all black to work today versus loud colors? Or did you decide for the loud colors versus you're sending a message? Did you decide to turn your music up super loud and tune everybody out? Or is it low enough and one ear is exposed, or maybe you've got bone conductor headphones so that you can hear what's going on around you and still be responsive? That behavior is still sending a message about the importance that you feel concerning others communicating with you, about whether or not you're open and receptive to communication, or you want to be left alone and you're closed off. All of that is a message that you're sending, regardless of whether or not you believe you're participating in this process. With nonverbal communication, you are absolutely participating in a communication process. And the problem comes in if you send a message that was received again in a way that you didn't plan on it being received that way. Maybe that wasn't your intent to offend somebody. Maybe it wasn't your intent to look as though you only support this group and you're not aligned with this belief system, or maybe you didn't intend to offend and insult somebody. You just woke up and existed. Well, you're still responsible for your communication exchange. And that's why you have to understand the communication process, and that nonverbal communication is as much of you sending a message as verbal communication is. And you've got to be responsible and acknowledge that you're a part of that process just as much as you do when you decide to speak to somebody. That is the very first thing that you have to understand about nonverbal communication. Now, the next thing you need to understand is the many types of nonverbal communication that exist, so that perhaps you can see how you sending a message a particular way in this particular area is getting the type of feedback that you're getting. And it may not be the feedback that you desire, that you feel like you deserve, that you intended to get. That wasn't the response that you thought that you would get by behaving or dressing or carrying yourself in a particular way. Well, let's look at some of the types of nonverbal behavior there is to see if you need to perhaps change that message, or maybe make that message even louder. Depends on the message, right? There are a few, well, several types of nonverbal communication. The first is our environment, right? Think about your desk at work. If you're in a work situation, in office work situation, or even let's say if you work from home, the work environment that you've created for yourself. Think about that. Is it someplace that has a lot of light and a lot of windows around you? Have you set up so that it's nice and cozy, where you've got some candles and nice flowers that you change out every other day? Or is it someplace that's very sterile? Like, this is the place where my computer and my thoughts reside, and that is it. Everything else is cleaned off. It's very tidy. If there's paper, it's straight and the pencil is right next to it. Like, what is the environment that you set? Is there music that people work by, or is it very quiet so that there can be clear thought? What is the environment you're creating? That sends a message about who you are, about how you like to work, about the environment that you're productive in, about the expectations of productivity. Your environment absolutely non-verbally sends a message. In addition to environment, your appearance. You see, I put the nice color lip paint on for you today. Usually it's just some gloss, right? I put some color. Why? Because I know I got a black shirt on. I don't want it all just. I need a pop of color that says something about me. I'm sending a message. Yeah, just like you, when you decide to show up with a shirt, a graphic tee that has skulls and or angry slogans or welcoming slogans like "Have a good morning," whatever it is, however you choose to appear to others. Understand that your appearance sends a message. We've seen that, right? At protest. Somebody shows up that doesn't appear to belong to this particular group or appear to share that particular belief system or mindset, and they're treated harshly, even abused and assaulted in some situations, right? Because of their appearance. It could completely be that they have the same belief system. Doesn't matter. They look like they don't belong. They are sending the message that they're not one of us non-verbally. Didn't say a word. You got to know your nonverbal communication absolutely matters. Artifacts. That's another type of nonverbal behavior. What's an artifact? And I'm so glad you asked. That is something like the little tchotchkes that you have on your desk, or like the little charms that you have hanging from your keychain, or the bumper stickers on the back of your car. My kid's an honor roll student. That's letting everybody know, and you're sending the message that you're proud of your child's successes. All of those are artifacts. They're things that if it were a million years later and somebody's digging up the dirt and they found this piece, it tells a story about who you are because it sends a message. So you've got to know non-verbally, even the pieces, the decorative things that we have around ourselves and about ourselves are sending a message about who we are without you even saying a word. Another type of nonverbal communication, proxemics. Think about your proximity. Have you ever been like, oh, you're too close? Why are you so close? I'm gonna need you to back up. Can you give me 6 feet? Oh, come here. I'm a person who loves to hug. Come closer to me. All of that, how you maintain the space around you, the proximity you allow people to come into, how close you allow them to come, and how much you tell them to back up. All of that sends a message about who you are, what you're willing to accept, the boundaries that you're placing around yourself for whatever reason that you might be able to articulate verbally later, but the message is already sent. And based on their filter, they'll determine and break down that message for meaning. And hopefully it's received the way you intended, but it could be received negatively, right? If you're like, hold up, back up, you're too close to me. That could be received as, well, you got a problem with me? Do I stink? You don't want me near you or something? Now it's questioning. And of course, context and relationship matters, right? If it's somebody who you're close to and you're typically close to them, and all of a sudden it's like, back up, that sends a contrary message versus somebody who could be a complete stranger. And you're like, back up because I don't know you and I don't know what you're going to do. And I just need to make sure I'm protecting myself. That sends a different message. It sends a message, though. That is the key that you have to understand about nonverbal communication. And this whole thing is just to make sure that you understand the various types so that you can take accountability and responsibility for your nonverbal behavior. So we've had environment, appearance, artifacts, and your proximity, proxemics. There's also touch. Touch is a type of nonverbal behavior. You walk up to somebody and you put your hand on their shoulder and you're like, hey, how are you? It's so good to see you today. That indicates something. That sends a message that you're familiar with this person, for example. It could also send a message that you're expecting some type of hug or acknowledgement to reciprocate the touch. Likewise, not touching people can send a message as well. Understand that that is nonverbal messaging that somebody is going to break down for understanding and decide whether or not they need to react or respond. And they're going to give that back to you in terms of feedback for you to understand whether or not your nonverbal messaging was received and comprehended the way you intended it to be so. There's also gestures. You know me, I'm hands all over the place. Cha, 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 cha. But hand gestures, they can be distracting, right? They can help emphasize a point. If I'm talking about something that's really robust and really intense and passionate, that could help aid the point. It could also be something that can be contrary. If I'm talking about something that's really, really small, and I've got my hands out here talking about something's really, really big, I'm sending contrary messages. Understand that flailing arms, pointing to things, shaking a hand versus not shaking a hand, all of those sends messages to the receiver. I had a student once who came to my class so angry, so offended because he felt disrespected throughout the day. And the very last place he went was just the cherry on the top. He felt completely disrespected and came to my class the angriest he had ever been. I'm like, hold up, talk to me. What's going on? Communicate with me what the challenge is. Come to find out, he had gone to the local convenience store. There was a young lady behind the counter of another culture that was new to our culture and our community and our neighborhood and to that store. And she returned his change to him by putting it on the counter and sliding it to him. Oh my God, you can't put my change in my hand. Oh, he was livid. He was so upset because that lack of that gesture of pushing it to him as opposed to being able to put it in my hand and touch me or get close proximity, sent a message of disrespect to him, only to find out later she was new to this country. And according to her culture, you don't put money in a man's hand because that gesture has a completely different meaning than the respect he thought he deserved by it being put into his hand. You got to know everything that you do is sending a message. It's not just about what you say at all. Nonverbal communication absolutely matters. Your environment matters. Your appearance matters. The artifacts that you have around you, all the little things that sayings and quotes and images that you like to have around you, your proximity, the amount of touch or no touch, gestures, and also eye contact, right? Eye contact absolutely matters. You would continue to ignore all of my videos if I completely talk to you like this during the entire time, like not giving you the respect to give you my attention. Yeah, eye contact. It says something, it sends a message about your confidence, about your comfort level, about your ability to be an authority figure versus somebody who's a subordinate. Your, I say confidence, but it's super important. Confidence, absolutely. Confidence about your ability to do a task, but also the confidence that you have within yourself, right? Your self-esteem. A lot of that comes through your eye contact. It's sending a message about who you are, about what you believe about yourself, about your abilities, about your competencies, about everything. It sends a message. That message could be completely wrong. All of these types of nonverbal communication, I'm telling you, the message that you send through them could be completely misunderstood and misinterpreted by the person who is receiving them from you. It can be a completely false interpretation of who you are. But that's why you got to know that you don't just need to focus on what you say and making sure that you're saying the right thing. You've got to understand that communication is a process that's taking place around you continually. It's a process that's taking place through you continually, through everything you do, through everything you touch, through everything, just your being, everything is sending a message all the time. And the more you're accountable to that, and the more you're responsible for that, the more you'll send the messages that truly do represent and reflect who you are, what you think, how you feel, what you believe. Let me tell you, the last piece that I want you to understand about nonverbal communication is that is the type of communication most used in code switching. Code switching is when you put on a different set of airs to pretend or behave as though you're someone else in a particular circumstance because that is the norm that is most received and accepted in that circumstance. So, for example, we were all told that when you go on a job interview to dress up. And so even though I may be applying to and interviewing for a job where I'm going to wear jeans, it's a casual environment. And in my everyday life, I dress down most often. I'm going to switch it up for that interview and I'm going to put on my Sunday best so I can put my best foot forward. That's code switching. And nonverbal communication are the tools and the things that we use the most to achieve that. We'll change our hair, change our outfit, change our posture, slow down the tone. Tone is another type of nonverbal communication because I can talk really fast to you and expect you to get what I'm saying. I can say this really fast and that really fast. I can make sure I talk really high, or I can talk really low and make sure that you understand that I'm the authority. But tone is another thing that we switch up and another type of nonverbal behavior that sends a message. So what I want you to get from all of this is when you have nonverbal behavior as your dominant form of communication, you still need to understand that that is a form of communication and that the communication process that takes place when you're speaking verbally, it still takes place when you are sending a message non-verbally, which you are continuing to do. The second you wake up, you are sending messages all over the place from what you decide to do, how you decide to do it, everything, what you decide to wear when you decide to do it, your body movements and gestures, who you let in that space and not let in that space. Those are all types of nonverbal behavior. And oftentimes people use those in code switching. Those are just some of the key things that you need to know when you think about nonverbal behavior. We'll continue to talk about this and specifically as it relates to relationships, leadership in the workplace. It affects and can slightly change and appear in far more different varieties and have far more different consequences when you're not responsible for it and when you don't pay attention to how that message could be received. So make sure you stay here, come back, subscribe, like, follow, comments. If any of this resonates with you, all right, maybe you didn't think about, oh my goodness, maybe that's why they're reacting to me that way because I keep showing up with a leave me alone shirt on. That's not you. I know it's not. Don't forget, it's not what you say, it's what you communicate. Until next time, take care.